Hello everyone and welcome to Blog on Everything and welcome back to the channel and welcome to what is probably a very long overdue podcast entry. Yeah, there's been a lot going on since not just the end of the season, which was only two Sundays ago, but just generally everything else outside of that. Okay, obviously Hansi Flick now being appointed. We talked about that, of course, in my last upload, which didn't do very well. Guessing maybe not too many people feeling very enthusiastic about the club. But look, there's still a lot to be positive about, I feel, and we're going to get into some of that stuff today. So we're going to be talking about here. It's going to be a bit of a longer format discussion. So when I say discussion, of course, I mean just me talking to myself, like it's always the case in these videos. But it's going to be at least a lot more fun just because of how much there is to talk about. Because Laporta has been talking, Ansu Fati has been talking, Lamine Yamals has been talking. It's been a lot of talking, and we're going to talk about all that talking. And of course, we're also going to talk a little bit about Barcelona's plans in the transfer window. What are they looking like so far with Hansi Flick now at the head of things? What exactly is the direction that Barcelona is going to be heading in? So, we'll talk about all of that. And yeah, we're going to end probably on the words coming from Ansu Fati, just because I feel like that's some of the stuff we want to let, just marinate a bit more. And we will start by talking about the words from Lamine Yamal. So, what exactly is Lamine Yamal been up to? Now, before I get really into talking about, exactly what he said and give my thoughts on that, I think generally, he is one of those kids who makes you sit back and go like, is this really a kid? And I don't just mean that by watching him play on the field, because if you have watched him play, then well, you know that, he was outperforming the adults on our team very regularly. And, with what looked like fairly little effort being put in. But yeah, aside from all of that, there's also a certain maturity that there is to him as a person, which honestly speaking is quite refreshing to see. And I think it shows through, especially in some of the things that he had to say in this interview that he had with GQ magazine. So what exactly did Ansu Fati say? So what exactly did Lamine Yamal say? Well, there's two things in particular which, for me, I thought, really caught my attention and really, like I said, accentuated just how mature he is for a kid, really. He's a teenager, 16 years old, and he's talking like this. So, anyhow, he was saying, whenever I go to my neighborhood, I see children who want to be like me, or I see a child playing whilst wearing my shirt. It's incredible to me because when I was little, I looked up to Messi or Neymar. To see children looking up to me is amazing, which once again is kind of just like this very much epiphany kind of moment, very much in a way kind of stoic coming from him, talking about how he is now in the place of the people that he used to look up to. And obviously he seems to me like, saying stuff like that seems to me like he's already kind of aware of just how much weight and expectation and all of that stuff that is on him and is on his shoulders, because he didn't throw Messi or Neymar out there lightly. He knows exactly what those guys mean, just to Barca but to the game. Then he goes on here to then talk about the press and these comparisons that we often see. Just this week I was listening to the Athletic, and they're doing these profiles on these young players who we should look out for, who could be having a breakout moment at the Copa America or the Euros. And they've talked about other kids like Endrick as well, Garnacho, and Lamine Yamal was the first profile that they dropped. And of course, as you could expect in there's this talk of he's the most exciting academy product that we've seen since Lionel Messi, and it's like, really guys, you just have to throw in Messi's name. And talking about that kind of hype and that kind of attention, this is what Lamine Yamal had to say. The press says that one day you're the new Messi and the next day you need to stop playing. The best thing is to focus on your work and think only about what the coach tells you. The one who really wants to help you, and also what your colleagues say, because they're also the ones who really want to help you. And again, like, he's 16. Just tell me how many of you, listening to this or watching this, how many of you had that kind of a mindset at 16? How many of you could have been thinking in that kind of way at just 16 years old? And that's one of just the craziest things I think about this kid. And one of the most impressive things about him as well is just how much depth there is to his thinking process outside of football. Like, he seems to be quite a mature young man. Kudos to Mr. and Mrs. Yamal for raising him that way. And, the whole La Masia and whatnot, the education that he got, because, a lot of that, you could say, a lot of what he is definitely owing to that, his parents and the environment that he grew up in. But, having said all of that, to grow up in that environment and to still be at this level of maturity, I think is pretty impressive. Like, we've seen a lot of other kids who I felt you could even argue were more talented than Yamal was, not named Messi. I don't know if you people remember a certain Gerard Deulofeu. If you watch his highlights from La Masia, they're even more impressive than what Lamine was doing, which is crazy. I know. Same as well for Ansu Fati, another one who came through who was just absolutely phenomenal. And, we'll get to talking about Ansu Fati later on, seeing some of what he had to say. But like Deulofeu, for instance, I know for a fact he wasn't as humble as Lamine Yamal comes across, from these words that are being shared. And that's a good thing, I hope he just keeps with that mentality and, that he can always remember these words that he's speaking here right now, because that's probably going to be the most important thing for his career, Look past those comparisons with Messi, because the same people who hail you today will nail you tomorrow. That's just generally how it works with the media, especially in a place like FC Barcelona. I mean, just look what they did to Xavi just recently. And Xavi was already a club legend. So imagine what they might do to a kid if he fails to live up to the hype that they themselves have pushed on him. Anywho, enough about what Lamine Yamal had to say. And before we get to, looking at what Ansu Fati had to say, I think we should now look at what our president, Joan Laporta, had to say, because this is the first time that he was speaking to the media after the appointment of Hansi Flick and after the, sacking of Xavi Hernandez, and since basically the end of the season and after, Real Madrid have won yet another Champions League, ridiculous. And after, of course, Real Madrid have announced the signing of Kylian Mbappe, which is also more ridiculous because they're adding Mbappe and Endrick to what they already had going on last season, which is just, it's crazy. It's crazy. Anywho, moving on from that thought, let's go and take a look now at the words that Joan Laporta had to say. And we'll start, first of all, by looking at some of what he had to say regarding Xavi, which for me has me looking at him really sideways and just like, man, this whole situation with Flick better just work out as well as we hope it could. Okay, so concerning Xavi, this is what Laporta had to say. In February, he had accepted apparently that Xavi would leave at the end of the season. And at the end of the season, when Xavi rectified his decision, when Xavi doubled back on his decision, it was like, nah, it's cool, I'll stay. Apparently, Laporta asked him, oh, really? Do you believe in the team? And according to Laporta, Xavi had said yes. But again, according to Laporta, he believes that there were some statements which Xavi made in this speech or in his press conference, which we know now is, those Almeria post-game comments. And he believes that those things caused him to rethink, and he got the feeling that he had to do a change in staff. He then went on to elaborate, saying that everything regarding Xavi staying was quite forced he said when we accepted Xavi's continuity, it was all quite forced. And I don't know, forced by who, you might wonder. But yeah, apparently it was all quite forced. And Xavi's enthusiasm is what made them initially go ahead to ratify, to say, okay, you know what, Xavi, you can stay. Which is kind of news to me. Xavi was enthusiastic to continue, and it was that enthusiasm which made them change their mind and say, okay, you can stay, Xavi. He goes on to say, however, the sporting area did not see it clearly, and I thought it was appropriate to make that decision to part ways after his statements. So, again, this is it's a pretty pregnant, pretty full, pretty loaded sentences that I just read there, which, from my side of, from my work is pretty good because it gives me a lot to talk about. Because, first of all, Mr. Laporta, was it really Xavi's decision? Was it really Xavi's enthusiasm that was at the heart of him staying? Did you not spend all of the time between February and, early May, convincing that man that he should stay? Isn't that the entire reason why he decided to stay? Wasn't it chiefly because your team, you were like, we need you to stay, Xavi. Even the night when Xavi announced that he would be leaving, it was you, Mr. Laporta, who, it was reported that you were telling him not to. So, it's pretty strange, it's pretty surprising to now hear this statement coming from Laporta, and he's claiming that Xavi is the one who sold him on continuing on. Because explain to me why Xavi would then make a U-turn. What reason did Xavi have for making a U-turn? Believing in the team? Anyway, that part doesn't make sense to me. But that's not the only stuff which Jean Laporta had to talk about, Xavi. He did also have to talk about the small issue of Mbappe going to Real Madrid because he was asked about it. His response was that, as a Kule, it's not the best news. What we want is for Barcelona to win the Champions League. And the signing of Mbappe is very good, but I like Barcelona's philosophy of La Masia more and creating players for the future, which, again, is rather interesting when you look at how many signings Barca are trying to make and how there's been this emphasis on the fact that Barcelona can sign players, that there isn't an issue financially. Is that something you'd be really trying to stress if La Masia is the heart, it's at the core of everything that you're trying to do? I mean, I'm not saying that kids haven't got their chance here at Barca under Laporta. They have. You could argue, though, that it's happened because they've just been too good to not give a chance, and that some of the ones who've been good, but not too good to ignore, like Alex Garrido, Marc Casado, like Benau, they haven't really gotten the minutes that they could have elsewhere. Kids like Pedrola who ended up leaving. So, it's interesting though. But continuing on, Laporta, because he did kind of, in that sentence, hint at the fact that there might be a need to make signings, because Barca will want to obviously respond to Real Madrid signing Mbappe. It's just how it usually goes between Barcelona and Real Madrid. Usually whenever one team makes a big name signing, just keep an eye out for the other team. They'll be trying to do the same thing. And in order for Barcelona, though, to do that, it's going to be a small issue of FFP, which eventually Laporta was asked about. I mean, after all, it is being rumored that FFP is the reason why Xavi basically got the sack, right? Is the reason why Xavi basically got the sack. So, what is Barcelona's position? Well, as far as FFP is concerned, Laporta claims that Barcelona is working to reach that 1-to-1 ratio and is very convinced that they'll be able to do it. So we've had a lot of talk in the past on this platform about Barcelona's financial situation and what all this 1-1 rule and all this stuff is about, like why it's happening that way. If you haven't seen any of those videos where I explained this, like maybe 2 or 3 years ago now, I'm going to obviously put the link up over there. You should see it over there. If it's not there, then I guess it's here. I always get confused. I never know where that thingy is going to pop up. And if you're listening to this on a podcast and not watching it on YouTube, then you might want to look into the curious cases and look at Barcelona's financial situation explained. I think there's something I did called Make It Make Sense. You have to look like really far back though in the timeline, in the feed for the podcast, to be able to spot that. Anywho, the reason why Joan Laporta is confident Barca will be able to make that a 1-to-1 ratio and be able to get back to a place where they can just start spending money and not needing to sell before they can spend, and only spending a small portion of what they got from the sales. The reason for all of that has to do primarily with the Nike deal. So Barcelona has that contract, with Nike for their kit production, and it was running up until 2026, if not 2025. My memory is vague on which of the 2 years it is, but it was coming close to running its course. And well, Barcelona went back to the negotiation table with Nike to renew for another 10 years. And this is what we're hearing so far about what this deal is going to be. Shout out to Rishad Rahman on Twitter, on X, who, personally, he helps sort out a lot of headaches when it comes to transfer rumors with Barca. Same as well with Barca Buzz. So between the two, some of the reports we've been saying, this is what we're getting, which is all but confirmed. And it's saying that the renewal bonus for Barcelona could be between 100 to 150 million euros. That's going to be in addition to 120 million that Barca will be getting per year for the next 10 years. So it's an increase on the previous, I think it was just a flat 100 million Barcelona were getting before, getting an extra 20 million now per year, and as a renewal bonus, which is basically, you can think of it as like a loyalty bonus or signing on bonus if you want. It's going to be about 150 million. So if Barca do get back to 1-to-1, we know that they'll at least have an extra 120 to 170 million that they can spend. Like I said, provided they get back to 1-to-1. And that deal is also going to be, like I said, for the next 10 years. So this will help Barcelona return to the 1-to-1, and it will help them strengthen the team without having to sell. That second part is maybe what worries me a bit, because the reason Barcelona do have to sell isn't so much for generation of income, it's because they need to get rid of some dead weight. I don't want to call out names, but we still have guys like Clement Longley, for example, who are going to be on Barcelona's books. Eric Garcia is going to be on Barcelona's books. What do you do with these guys? Do you keep Eric Garcia, and then, does that mean you then have to sell guys like Mikhail Faye so you can keep guys like, Garcia and Longley? I don't know if that's such a good decision. And of course, there's a lot more. There's forwards like Ferran, who, it's not really making sense to be keeping him, especially if Lewandowski is staying as well and Victor Roque is staying as well. So, it's all of that mess, which still has to be cleared up also. Anywho, further details that we got on Barcelona's renegotiated deal is that it's going to come with a fair amount of clauses. Chief among them is a clause for Barcelona's participation in the design of kits, which I just have to say, looking at this apparent or alleged kit that Barcelona will be wearing next season, that really is maybe a good clause to have in there, because sometimes Nike really just give you whatever everybody else is wearing. Like, it has nothing to do with your club, nothing to do with your colors, with your history, with the culture, from where you're from. They just give you this random generic kit template with colors, like I said, nothing to do with your team, and you're supposed to wear it. So if this now means that Barcelona will have the option to be like, no, we're not going to wear that. Okay. Barca will allegedly have an active role in the design of the kits and other official garments of the club. So, training kits and all that kind of stuff, ensuring that these all reflect the identity and tradition of the team, of the institution, of the club, if you want, however way you want to put that. So, it's crazy because I do remember there was one time when Nike did have this pretty dope template for third kits where they were using parts of the cities that a team is from, and they were incorporating that into the design of those third kits. And that was in the 2018-19 season. And it's got honestly one of my favorite third kits from Barca, it was peach kind of orange color, which, you have to be brave to rock that. But, I got one. I rocked it. I was brave. And just because I liked the fact that it incorporated the design of the Barcelona cityscape from the bird's eye view when you're looking down at it, which, Barca does have a pretty dope city design. I mean, just look at that. Yeah, that was incorporated in the kit. And, stuff like that. That's more of what you want to be seeing from Nike. So if this clause means we get to see more stuff like that, more stuff, from the design intertwined, more stuff from the club and its identity and history intertwined in the design of the kit, then I'm a happy camper, honestly speaking. Anywho, moving on from Joan Laporta and all that he did say, we can now just briefly look at some of what we're going to be seeing in as far as transfers now that Hansi Flick is at the wheel, so to say. Okay, because we do know that Xavi had his plans on who he wanted to keep, on who he wanted to sell, on whom he wanted to, loan out and all that kind of stuff. And, well, all of that has obviously changed now that Xavi is no longer at the helm, now that it's Hansi Flick. Hansi Flick has his own ideas, starting from training regimes. I'm hearing that he wants to make the Barcelona team just a bunch of gym bros. But aside from that, there's the transfer window, which is probably the most pertinent of all of the things, because we're not going to see the team get into training until after both the Euros and the Copa America, because most of this team will be playing in those, most of the players in this team will be representing their national teams at those tournaments. So one player, though, who won't be representing his team at any tournament and is going to be the first one who we start with in as far as who Hansi Flick is deciding not to keep, it's Sergi Roberto. So Sergi Roberto was basically on the highway to being renewed as soon as Xavi was confirmed as, continuing next season. It was basically just waiting for Sergi Roberto to sign a new contract. However, Flick's arrival has changed everything, as you could expect, and there are chances that Roberto will have to leave this summer because his continuity isn't a priority for Flick and would have very little minutes even if he does stay. So, he's not a priority. There are even a lot of voices from, Flick's party, as well as, I'm guessing, some members of the board that believe that Marc Casado should instead take Roberto's place in the next season, which I honestly am not against. They believe that he would provide more physicality, more youth. He would still keep the whole Catalan, La Masia product thing going. And he's obviously going to have, more ambition because he hasn't yet won anything. And he'll do all of that for less money because, he's cheaper. He's not going to demand kind of contract that a Sergio Roberto would. And really, it really goes with Hansi Flick's plan for Barcelona, which is to have more energy, more strength, and more youth in the team, which, ending on that statement when talking about Roberto, is funny when you consider that Robert Lewandowski is all but guaranteed to stay now that Flick is here, and, I don't know how much of energy, strength, and youth he gives this team. Apparently, though, he is one of 3 players that Hansi Flick sees as being very crucial to continuing at this team. The other 2 being Frankie de Jong and Ronald Araujo. And we know that these are all three players that Xavi was looking in some way or another to probably ship, especially Araujo and Lewandowski. They would have probably been the easier ones to ship compared to Frenkie de Jong, who would have been difficult to find a club that would be willing to pay him the amount of money that he wants to be paid. So aside from all of those, though, there are some targets whom both Xavi and Flick have in common. Those happen to be Joshua Kimmich and Nico Williams. So with Nico Williams, it's been said apparently that he's a priority and that Barca have allegedly communicated this to his camp, his entourage, his people, which I don't even know what that means or what significance that has, because the last I checked, the same was the case for Arda Güler. Barca communicated to his camp that he was a priority and all that. But anyway, the point just being that communicating to his camp doesn't guarantee anything. We're still going to have to wait to see how all of this unfolds. And it's probably going to unfold after the Euros, or at least after Spain get eliminated, wherever that's going to be. That's when we're going to get more answers with regards to both Nico Williams and Joshua Kimmich. Although we do know that Hansi Flick has apparently promised our board that he will do everything within his power to convince Joshua Kimmich to sign for Barca. So again, let's see how all of that plays out. But aside from that, in terms of building a squad, we had been told that Hansi Flick does want to keep João Cancelo. So, we could see Barcelona making moves to try and permanently sign João Cancelo. And on top of that as well, he is apparently going to keep both Pau Cubarsí and Alejandro Balde as a big part of his squad going forward. So, with Balde, we kind of expect that. Of course, you do wonder, though, you might ask, what exactly is that going to mean now for players like Marcos Alonso? Where exactly is he going? We do know he's on his way out, but where is he going? Where is he going to land? And also, we don't know what any of this stuff, with Casado and the likes and Joshua Kimmich coming in and, Guido Rodriguez no longer being a target from the looks of it. And now as well, we're hearing Mikel Merino being considered by Barca, which could be a good bit of business if Barcelona pay something under 20 million or, just about 20 million euros. Could be a good bit of business. But then, what does that also mean for the likes of Oriol Romeu? We'll wait to see exactly how all of that unfolds. We're also being told that Flick wants to play a 4-2-3-1. How exactly will that work with the players that he has? We'll probably have to discuss that in another video and another time. Maybe that's what we're going to talk about on the weekend or, on Sunday night. We'll see how all of that goes as well. But in conclusion, I think all we have left to talk about for now is the whole Ansu Fati situation, because Ansu did have this interview with Mundo Deportivo, MD. I'd advise you to go and read it if you can. And I'm just going to talk about a few things that he said which could be of interest to us. First and foremost has to do with Hansi Flick. He said in his interview that during his time at Brighton, he did have an opportunity to meet Hansi Flick because it was the day when he went to pay a visit to the club. And he says, I wish him the best. He's coming to the club that is the best in the world, and I'm sure he would do very well. And when asked what exactly he could bring to Barcelona for Hansi Flick, he said, well, I'm a La Masia player. I've been at the club for many years, and for me, playing for Barca is my greatest enthusiasm. It's his biggest dream, obviously. Every time I get the chance, he says, I try to do my best, and I will try to do my best. Sometimes it can be better or worse, but I will always try to fight. So, I don't really know how much else he could be saying here in as far as trying to say, hey, Mr. Flick, I'm here as well. Don't forget about me, I'm not just part of the furniture, I'm part of the club, interested in working with you. I'd like very much to stay at Barca. And seeing how that works out with all these rumors we're hearing that, Jorge Mendes and Joan Laporta want to still push for this João Felix transfer, which for me is completely insane. I don't understand why. I could see why you'd want to add João Cancelo to this current squad, but if you're going to be signing Nico Williams, you still have Ansu Fati on your books and Ferran Torres as well. I'm not seeing exactly where the motivation is coming from to get João Felix added to the team, you know? Anyway, aside from talking about Hansi Flick, Ansu Fati also talked about a certain Lamine Yamal, which, it's pretty interesting because in some ways, you could consider them analogous to each other, Ansu Fati very much being like the guy that came before Lamine Yamal and the guy that, laid the foundation for him. And, well, let's just go ahead and have a quick look at some of what Fati had to say with regards to Lamine, which, I felt was pretty insightful as well. And he said, Lamine can reach the very top. He's already on his way, but we have to take care of him and give him everything he needs. He can give a lot to the club, but we have to protect him. If he fails, let him know he has people who support him. Which, man, I just have to say, it's almost like Ansu is telling us everything that we didn't do for him as a club. Everything that Barca and maybe even the fan base, everything that they didn't do for him when he was on his come up, when he was killing it. And that's exactly what Barca need to do for Lamine. And, part of it, we're already failing at this point. I'm thinking maybe Ansu watches some of the videos on here because, just at the start of the season, I did do this whole video where I was saying Barcelona need to take care of both Lamine Yamal and Xavi so that they don't end up suffering the way that Pedri, Ansu, Balde as well, all these guys have suffered because of being just given too much too quickly and being asked to do too much on the pitch. Just, the sheer amount of matches these guys played. Way too much. So I very much agree with Ansu here in saying that Barcelona need to take care of Lamine, better care, and they need to protect him because, he's not just Ansu Fati's, replacement or successor in as far as the record books for both Barca and Spain is concerned, but he represents something even more than that, which, if the club takes care of him, could be something wonderful. Anywho, that is basically that. We end on those words from Ansu Fati. Again, do let me know what you think about all of this stuff that we have shared here. If this is your first time, by the way, please hit like and do hit subscribe and leave a comment. It helps a lot, guys, with the algorithm, especially looking at how terribly the last video did. So, we could use all the help we can get over here. We is just me, by the way. But, yeah. Otherwise, I thank you for tuning in. Do have a great day, and Forza Barça.